Hi, this is Brian Hall with project update number 2 for the UMass Lowell Alternative Energy course introduction for summer 2016. So for my solar panel project, I have connected up these 20 solar panels. They are in parallel now. I used to have them in series as one long string. Actually had 23 of them, but by reducing that now, that means I have these CIS cells, cadmium, indium, selenium. I now have they're each rated at 4.5. Well, technically they were advertised as 5 volts each, but they are actually, all I get out of them is about 4 volts each, maybe 4.5 at most. And at 100 milliamps at most. So I have each string of 4 in series to give me about, well, 4 times 4 is about 16, but theoretically a maximum of 20 volts. That's what I was told by the person who sold them to me. And I have them all parallel here. So as, I'll zoom in so you can see these junctions here. I have all of the red wires on the right here. That's all the positive ends. And over on the left, I have all the black wires. And those wires go down to alligator clips. On this slightly overcast day, I get 9.18 volts total. The amperage will vary, but there's a theoretical maximum amperage on that panel of 500 milliamps at most. That is my first panel. The second panel that I decided to go ahead and purchase is this Competition Solar 7-watt panel. It's made for charging batteries directly, such as in an RV or what have you, and that's exactly what I'm going for, using solar power to charge batteries. Currently, at this time of day, at about 2:30 in the afternoon, I am getting just from the 7-watt panel, that's 7 watts maximum. I'm getting 16.67 volts, about there. So that's like about a 7 volt difference from the 9 or so volts there. So I get more power out of the single unit. However, notice that for milliamps I'm getting like 0.71 because this is just in amp meter. There's no load on it. So load is determined by what you do to put the panels to work with. And in terms of connecting the actual battery, 7 amp hour 12 volt battery. I've decided not to use the charge controller at all because the charge controller, well, it takes the battery into charge. It consumes power to run the circuitry and the LED input at the same time it's trying to charge the battery. Because this battery is only 7 amp hour, it loses charge to power this. This charge controller, and here's the information about it here, is designed really to work with like a deep cycle battery, or say even a car battery. Something with, say, at least 20, if not even up to 100 or more amp hours to it. And the life of a battery is determined by the amp hour rating and how much current is drawn from it. It's proportional to those two parameters. So with a 7 amp hour battery, I am best off charging the battery directly from the solar panels. So without the charge controller, I have experimented with connecting the two negative terminals of the panels together, and then the two positive terminals together in parallel. And in parallel, I get a voltage across them of only 10.89 volts, because you see the voltage from the large 7 watt cell is going back into the, and trying to charge the CIS cell grid with those 20 little cells, because that's how voltage sources in parallel work. The one with the greater concentration of voltage pressure will try to charge the one of lower voltage pressure. So while that doesn't work, I'm trying to get this battery to, like, say, even this 13 volts. I've found what works best is connecting them in series. And with this series connection, that means I connect, for example, from my CIS cell grid, I connect the positive battery terminal to the battery. Then I take the negative terminal from the CIS strip and connect it to the positive terminal of the 7 watt amorphous silicon panel. And now I basically have daisy chained them together in series. And when I connect the voltmeter, I get .99 volts, basically almost 27 volts here. And now with that all connected up, I get across a voltage across the battery of 10.88 volts. So I'm almost at 11 volts. I take the rest of the day, probably tomorrow, to get it up to, say, 12 or even 13 volts. There's supposed to be some clouds though, but as a demonstration of the voltage I have been able to get on this, I'll show you some examples of I have been able to run through this inverter, which is a computer power backup supply deal here. As you see, I've used this energizer supply. There's the power switch on it. It never gets plugged into the wall. I just don't use that part. I simply put the 7 amp hour battery, which actually came with this unit and is designed to work with this. It's this is the type of unit that if there's a power outage, then it'll give you like 5 minutes to save your work and shut down your computer, because it converts the batteries 12 volts into 120 volts AC to power your wall socket type 120 volt up to 15 amp probably devices. So the battery connects to these terminals right here, and that is my process. I take the battery off of the charging clips, bring it over to the table where I can plug it into the inverter, and I'll show you how I can run 120 volt devices from here. So we have charged up our battery to a sufficient voltage using the power of the sun gathered through the solar panels. Let's show you the voltage level on this now. Okay, that battery has, as you see, 12.7 volts across it. And we have here our power inverter, which again is not plugged in at all to the wall. It's just simply what used for a computer power backup. As you can see, this battery is a type that normally goes with this type of unit. So let's go ahead and use this power, see if it'll run a standard 100 watt light bulb here. This is simply a 120 volt cord wired in and plugged into the output of our UPS power supply, which is going to act like an inverter. So let's make our battery connections. Black, black, and red to red. Well, I'm going to run it briefly because I want to do a few little demos here. And turn that on. We have power, however briefly. Well, as you see, that did power that for a second. And now that's 100 watts. That's asking a lot of the little battery here. So now let's go ahead and put a little 7.5 watt light bulb used for appliances. Let's try on just a tiny little bit of power here. Let's try that. And here we go. As we see, this is a standard, what they call an appliance bulb, and it could run it for exactly as long as you just saw. So that does work.